So the OG Honda City was launched back in India nearly 20 years ago, and back then it was a very performance-oriented sedan. But since then, due to the evolving time and due to the demand of the masses, the Honda City had to keep upgrading and becoming more evolved, mature and grown up. Now in its latest avatar, the 2022 Honda City is finally here in its hybrid powertrain, and it is called the Honda City HEV. So in layman terms, what this essentially means is this is the all-new Honda City Hybrid, which has a claimed fuel efficiency of nearly 26.5 kilometers per liter, or offers nearly 1000 kilometers per fuel tank. Now let's see if this is really true, and we are here in Bangalore to find out just that with the all-new Honda City. Now before we do that, why don't you go and like and subscribe to Top Gear Magazine India. Let's begin. So let's talk about the design of the all-new exterior of the Honda City Hybrid. To be honest, you would need glasses like mine to differentiate between the petrol, diesel and the hybrid variants. Let me tell you what the differences are nonetheless. The differences are, you have this new hexagonal design under the front grille, you have this Honda badge which has this blue tinge, and you have this fog light which has this different sort of housing in the front. Overall, the design is pretty similar on the exterior. Moving on to the side, and again, there are no significant changes compared to the petrol and diesel variants. The only difference being this 16-inch alloys which get a dual tone finish, unlike its predecessors which also had a dual tone finish, but this looks somewhat similar and different at the same time. Now the changes on the rear are still pretty evident. You have this small spoiler on the tail, you have this fake diffuser in a fake carbon fiber finish. Now I don't know how much does it actually diffuse, and most importantly, you have this HEV badge that's here. Also, they say that the tail light feels slightly different compared to the petrol and diesel variants, but why don't you let us know in the comments below if it actually looks different or it looks the same. While everything is good about the Honda City Hybrid, the one thing that's not is the boot space, which is down from 506 liters to 306 liters. Now that is primarily because of the batteries being placed below the rear seats. But that being said, a luggage set like this will still fit comfortably in the boot, and also you still have a space saver wheel and some extra space here to store or hide something that you need to. While the changes on the exterior are still pretty evident, the changes on the inside are almost unnoticeable. There are very subtle changes such as this electric handbrake. The gear knob has a PRND and a B mode for regenerative braking, and at the rear seats on the right side you have a vent for your batteries. Otherwise, the overall interior is just the same. Although the TFT display does show a lot more features for your Honda sensing and also shows your power being generated. For instance, from how much power is being generated from the battery. While I spoke about the subtle changes on the outside and the subtle changes on the inside, the one change that's not so subtle is obviously its all-new powertrain. What it is a 1.5 litre Atkinson motor hybrid electric motor that also has a petrol engine and an electric motor with the batteries at the rear. Let me tell you what it does. So essentially the 1.5 litre detuned petrol engine sends power not to the wheels but actually acts as a generator for the electric motor that sends power to the wheels instead, and it also charges up the battery. Now for most part of your driving, including city driving and casual highway driving, you will not feel the petrol engine at all because you will be mostly using the electric motor. So when you do put your foot down, what you do feel is when you cross the speed of 80, the 1.5 litre engine does kick in with a single speed gearbox mated to the electric motor, which both send power to the wheels depending on how much power it requires. But for most part of your driving, you're not even going to feel the engine compared to the electric motor, which is why this car can offer such a great fuel economy. Now under the skin is where the hybrid is completely different compared to its petrol and diesel counterparts. Unlike its 1.5 liter motor that you find in the petrol engine, this is essentially a detuned 1.5 liter Atkinson cycle motor that produces around 98 bhp, and the electric motor produces around 109 bhp. Now, primarily, most of the time the power is sent by the electric motor to the front wheels, and the battery is charged by the 1.5 liter engine. The 1.5 liter engine produces power only when you're above the speed of 80, and that is when there is a single gearbox that sends power to the front wheels, including the electric motor. What this simply means is that this engine doesn't really have a gearbox per se, and it is its electric motor that sends power to the wheels most of the time. What that means is that the power is pretty seamless and pretty effortless. And yes, let me remind you that this has around 253 Nm of torque on offer, which means that it is pretty torquey, just like any other electric motor that you can imagine. But unlike the electric motor having that constant push from zero, this doesn't have that per se. But again, it is not non-sporty at all. But looking at how most of us would want to use the vehicle, this suits most of our needs. When you're in the city at basic cruising speeds, the engine actually runs purely on EV alone. And even when you do press the accelerator even slightly, like when you do press the throttle, it is the electric motor that generates power from its 1.5 liter engine. The petrol engine doesn't really send power to the wheels, but it actually sends power to the electric motor, which in turn sends power to the wheels. So yeah, it is very, like I said previously, it's only when you're doing really high speeds is when the 1.5 liter petrol engine and the electric motor combined send power to the front wheels. But majority of the time, it is actually a electric motor sending power to the front wheels. Now let me talk about a few more things about the driving dynamics of the vehicle. Well, this is nearly 110 kilograms heavier than the petrol powered version that you find on the Indian roads. But that doesn't translate to it feeling heavier. The steering dynamics still feel pretty sharp. The acceleration is pretty good because you do have almost 100 Nm more than the standard vehicle. Also, the suspension has been tuned to have additional weight on the vehicle but not feel jittery, bouncy on bad surface of the road. Now honestly, I'm driving in the city of Bangalore and the roads here are pretty good, so I'm not really having to test the suspension, nor am I having to test the ground clearance. Like you can imagine that with the battery pack you might think that okay, the ground clearance is reduced, but that is not the case because the battery packs is actually underneath the rear seat and they're not underneath the car, so the ground clearance has not changed either. What has changed is the feel of the brakes, because now this has regenerative braking, which essentially is that when you are wanting to slow down, the car uses the brakes to generate battery power, which is pretty impressive. So you don't actually have to press the brakes. Like for instance, now I'm trying to slow down, like there's a bus in front of me, I'm trying to slow down. I just have to let go of the throttle and the car automatically slows down for myself. Now I can vary how quickly I want the regenerative braking to work in 3 different modes. I can have it in base, medium or really high. Really high is when the car will almost come to a standstill when you let go of the throttle. So in a sense, when you're stuck in traffic, you don't have to keep pressing the accelerator and the brake. You can actually drive just using one pedal itself. Now safety is another very important aspect for Honda, and with this upgrade, Honda has focused more on safety. For instance, again, because you get this car only in one trim, you get all the standard features that you can imagine, plus 6 airbags, ABS, EBD, everything, all the works. You have all the safety works. But what's really commendable is this all new technology called Honda Sense, which is primarily a camera mounted on the windscreen that looks at a 100-degree angle of the road, and in case it needs to stop in an emergency, it will stop for you. For instance, if you're distracted, you're not looking on the road and there's a car coming in front of you to a halt, and you realize that, oh my god, I'm really close, the car will first notify you that you're going to have a crash. And if it realizes okay, you're going to have a crash, it will brake for you to reduce the impact. It will not stop the car, it will reduce the impact, causing much less damage, or even if you're at a slow speed, it will actually come to a halt. Furthermore, this also has adaptive cruise control, something that you see in most of the cars these days. But again, this is something that's new in this segment. You don't have any other car that offers this in this segment. Speaking about the cruise control, what you also have is lane keep assist, which primarily means that when you are when you're on the road and when it senses there are 2 lanes, it will keep you the center of the lane, and every time you try to veer off the lane, it will notify you on the screen up front, and if you still don't slow down, it will actually steer you back into the lane. Now these things are more of something to assist the driver and not really take over the car, and you cannot just completely trust these systems to run the car. Moreover, I would personally recommend that you should not always rely on these systems while you're driving, but you should also be focusing on the road yourself. So let me talk about the NVH levels of the car. Now this is something that you will really appreciate, because again, this primarily being an EV car, no, it's not actually an EV car, it's a hybrid car, but it has an EV motor as well, it's actually pretty soundless. You don't hear a lot of road noise, and you don't hear a lot of engine noise. It's only when you really slam the throttle is when you hear the engine noise creep in. But moreover, that is very rare. When you're driving in the city, you're not going to hear a lot of engine noise, you're not going to hear a lot of road noise, and the sound insulation through the windows is pretty decent. Now after spending an entire day with the Honda City Hybrid, I'm really hard to find faults in the car per se. Again, like I said, the only thing that I could find was the boot space and the overall interior space when compared to its competitors. But in current times where the fuel prices are skyrocketing, having a car which can offer nearly 25 to 26 kmpl is really commendable. Now the thing is, its price. Now Honda has not told us how much the car is going to cost, but we're expecting to be somewhere between the 19 to 21 lakh ex-showroom price, which does make it a really expensive alternative compared to its competitors. In the end, we can only see how much does Honda actually launch the price at, and until then, I would definitely recommend this car to somebody looking to buy a fuel efficient vehicle, because this does offer the fuel efficiency that it claims. With that, thank you so much for watching to BBC Top Gear India. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. This is Yash Sunil signing out, and stay tuned for more videos. Bye bye.